didn't play. There we go.
Hey, everybody. Are you ready to pivot? Put one foot in the direction you've decided to go, then turn 90 degrees and see what happens. What are you aware of? What's possible? Could this be the beginning of a totally different and much more exciting adventure and future? Welcome to the Irreverent Therapists. I'm joined by Pam Houghteling.
Hello.
And I'm Marilyn Bradford. And hi, everybody. What direction are you heading in?
Sometimes I feel like I'm heading in no direction. I'm just going all over the place.
What if that's not a bad thing?
Well, that's something, because I mean, from the time you're a kid, everybody's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like,
Yes.
How do you envision your future? And you need
Yes.
to decide at a very young age what it's going to be. And that influences where you go to school and or if you go to school and all this stuff. And that's very, I'm going this direction.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like Marilyn and I, that is horrible to think of.
Yes. We have a friend, and this can show up in all kinds of ways and places in your life. We have a friend who was engaged to be married, and he knew the whole time that it wasn't, it just had a weird energy to it. So he was talking to another friend, and he was telling them, oh, I'm engaged to be married. I'm engaged to be married. My fiance is buying all these wedding, magazines. She said, what color do you want the wedding to be? He said, black. But anyway, so after announcing to everybody, finally he did his pivot. He called everybody up and said, I'm not going to marry this person. Can I move in with you? It was just like, that's an emotional pivot.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times pivots are dependent on you acknowledging what you know to be true for you, rather than following the thing that you're supposed to be doing. So,
yeah. Well, I have a story about that. When I went to graduate school in social work, my target was to be able to help people through like challenging times, through difficult transitions and stuff like that. And I was moving to New Hampshire, living with my sister until I got my first job out of social work school. And I interviewed for two very different types of jobs. One was an extremely secure full-time job at a hospital, not doing what I actually was really interested in doing. Also, a lot of my experience in school and my practicums with working with elderly people, and I really wanted to do that. The other job was only part-time. It was like an hour away, and it was for a home health agency working with the most difficult to work with aging people that they had.
wow.
And energetically, it was like that place, the people I'd work with, the clients I would have was what I was looking to do. It was so expansive and light. And I can remember going out in the woods and sitting on a rock going, do I choose the safe, comfortable, I know I'll be, okay and have a good job and everything? Or do I chance it on what I'd really like to do, where I'd have to find another part-time job, to be able to do both?
Yeah.
And to me, that was a pivot, because up to that point, I'd always done the safe thing. Like I was a math major in college because I knew I could prove, you're proving thing. You either got it right or you didn't. It's very clear cut. And just going to social work school was a change of going into this gray area where you don't know if you're doing well or not.
Yes.
And so that was like a place where I just went, I'm going for it. I'm taking this leap. I'm going to do the job that I'd really like to do and see what I can create rather than staying safe.
Yeah, that's definitely that kind of pivot. And a lot of pivoting has to do with doing something that the rest of the world, your family, your culture says is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
not, I mean, my mother was always about, you need to stay in teaching or be a secretary and have a good retirement plan. And I was like, I'd die.
Yeah.
Actually, I tried teaching for a little while and it was okay, but it was just, and actually that was a real pivot for me too. I taught in Boston and then I taught down in Texas for a while. And after the 5th year, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it is not this.
It's not this.
Yeah. And I thought, what do I really love to do? Cook. So I went from having a quasi decent salary to making minimum wage as a cook in a restaurant. And I cooked in several restaurants. And I made it work. I
Yeah.
took in a roommate or housemate and ate at the restaurant and did all these various things. But the point was, I was happy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Most pivots are about choosing your happiness. Not that things make you happy, and that's something we can get into in a little bit too.
Yeah.
But there are, I mean, you can be a lot happier living in a lovely cottage by the sea than living next to the garbage dump. I mean, you don't have to work at it as hard. So, you might want to choose the cottage by the sea. And eventually I changed that too. And I got into graduate school and became a clinical social worker, which has worked for me in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And I did it for the variety. I thought, you know what, if you just become a regular, like a psychologist or it's something in Texas, LPC, I think, licensed.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. You can pretty much only do therapy. As a social worker, I'm like, I can do the kind of things that you did.
Yeah.
You know, I can go back and work in schools because I like some of the kids. So a lot of times pivots will open up more possibilities for you.
Yes, that is a great way of putting it. It's like where you think and feel like your life is very kind of narrow and in one direction and you don't have a lot of choice. To me, pivoting is acknowledging I actually have choice.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things I can choose. They might not all fit into what I thought my life would be or, what my family expects of me and that kind of thing. But every time I've done that leap,
Yes.
to go with what I know is going to create the kind of life I'm really interested in living and where it's unsure, there doesn't seem like a safety net or anything. It's always created greater for me.
Yes.
And helped me, you talked about happiness, help me be happy with whatever I'm doing. Cause I ended up after a few years working at a mental health center, which again, I loved the work I was doing. It was a massively dysfunctional place to work.
Why am I not surprised?
Often they are. But it was because I kept choosing for the type of work that fulfills me, it makes, that brings happiness, that even if it's like a challenging day, I feel very, expansive and is rewarding to be doing it. Like that always also gave me the tools and the sense of being to be in some really wonky work environments and still have fun and have a great time and love my job.
Yeah.
So I think that willingness to pivot to see what's available and what actually works for you and choose it, even if it's not going along with what your family thinks or your partner thinks or the world thinks. It brings so much to you.
Yeah.
That gives you a resiliency and a way of encountering all kinds of things in a different way.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned choice and you mentioned happiness, which brought up something for me. There's an exercise I used to do with my classes. Would you mind if I used you as a guinea pig?
Please use me as a guinea pig. I would love to be a guinea pig.
Okay. So Pam, close your eyes and get relaxed into your seat. just in a space. And I'm doing this because I'd love for you all to try this. Now, get the energy of your whole being happy. And just be with that energy. Now, get the energy of being really sad.
I can't.
Whoops. Maybe this isn't going to work the way I thought it would. She's just too naturally happy.
Do you want me to try to be sad?
Or how about you try to be angry?
Oh, that I can do.
Okay.
As I agree the other day.
I'm not sure she could do that either.
I really can't do it.
All right, it's okay. The point was, most people have this idea that when they have a feeling, if they're happy, if they're sad, if they're angry, it's greater than they are. They can't pivot to something else.
Yeah.
But the point of the exercise.
I failed, Marilyn. I failed.
Totally. Don't you love it? I have to give her an F- in the exercise. But most people have a baseline, either depression or anger or sadness. And if they can begin in a very quiet space when not a lot is going on to change different feelings, you can see that you can pivot. You're in charge. That's the thing about pivots. You're in charge. The other, whatever else is external and out there, isn't in charge.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And especially because like what you're talking about of change the feeling that you're having and finding that you can do that. That's a kind of terminology that we use from our therapy histories. But then if we shift into access consciousness facilitator mode, it's about shifting the energy you're being, right?
Yes.
And, feelings is just one of the ways energy might be showing up in how you're interpreting it and stuff. But it's, because to me, that tool, like the other day, you said, can you do anger? And it was like, well, I was angry the other day. Can't quite recreate it now. But how I shifted out of that was using different things I know to shift the energy I was being so that I had some space that wasn't angry, and then it could all dissolve.
Right.
Or another example, I was actually working on my taxes on the other day.
Good for you.
I know, good. I'm so good. My daughter's home on her spring break, and she's been exposed to a lot of access tools over the years. And I got into such a funk with some financial stuff and this and blah, blah, blah. And I could have stayed in it and just sat and wallowed and been miserable for the rest of the afternoon. I got up and made the choice to go talk to my daughter because I know she's someone, she'll basically, if I'm choosing to be in a funk, she'll be like, you have fun with that, Mom. Like she is so not going to buy into it or join me in it and wallowing in the misery of taxes or anything else. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to her. And she asked me a few questions of like, okay, what's the worst case? And I was like, oh, obviously I could sell my house and blah, 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 and like all these things. And then she said, would that be so bad? And I was like, no, that sounds kind of exciting. It's like every worst case I could come up with was nothing that I can't handle easily.
Right.
And that shifted me out of it. And so first there was the choice to stand up and move and do something instead of sitting there continuing to do taxes in this space. Choosing to interact with someone who I know is good at kind of getting me out of crap if I'm in it. And then actually using some tools that I know to shift that. So each of those was a shift of energy. And you could even say each is a pivot because, years ago when Warren and I, my husband, we were first married and we get into worry about finances, we could go on that way for months, right? Like just being like, oh, there's such a problem. and things. And over the years, we tried different things of what I now would say is shifting our energy with money.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, until we got to the point where we didn't worry about money, and it wasn't about the amount of money there is, it's the space of being that we were willing to be with regards to money.
Well, and the first choice is I'm going to pivot. I'm not going to stay in something. If you're noticing the energy's funky,
Yeah.
just okay, I'm going to pivot. Now, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I'm going to get up and talk to my daughter. Years and years ago, when her daughter was a lot younger, and neither of us had been in Access, all that, but we've been in Access. She
Long
used to
time now.
text me and say, "My mother needs to talk to you." Cracked me up all the time.
Yeah.
And we helped each other get out of fugs over the
Yes.
years.
Yes. Basically, she's like, I'm not dealing with you. I'm handing you off to Marilyn.
It was funny.
Which makes me think pivoting isn't something that you have to do alone.
Yes, exactly.
Right? I mean, there may be people in your life who don't like the choice you're making because it is different from what they've been expecting, and they are choosing, you know, they want you to be the way they want you to be.
Right.
So a lot of times when you pivot, it's not making everybody happy. Sometimes that's the pivot. If you've been someone who's always choosing to make everyone around you happy,
Yes.
and you actually choose for what's going to work.
Yes.
What works for you and them, or what works for you, even if it doesn't work for them. There's all sorts of ways of pivoting. But there's going to be people in your life who are like, yay, you're pivoting. I'm here. You know, if you need to talk, if you need a little something, make you some cookies.
Yeah, absolutely. And another way that pivoting can show up, I mean, we've both been therapists, is with a person, and now Access facilitators, with a person being willing to change their point of view.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was facilitating someone, and she was saying she was in some kind of body movement class, and she said that she would ask the leader, the instructor, a question, and the instructor wouldn't answer. And I was looking at the energy, and so she was making herself wrong and feeling disrespected. I was looking at the energy, so I asked her, did it ever occur to you that the instructor may be a stupid idiot and may not know the answer? And she was like, oh.
That you might know more than the instructor.
Exactly.
More. That's awesome.
So she quickly pivoted her point of view.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, you might hear us talking about this and think, okay, I have to go out and completely change 90 degrees or 180, you know, everything I'm doing. That's not the point.
No,
because that would just be going along with what Marilyn and I are talking about.
Right.
This is about you getting very present with you and what works for you.
Yes.
And being willing to have what works for you maybe not work for everybody.
Yes.
You know, and especially if it's different than your family. You know, when I was making that choice about jobs just out of social work school, the secure job is totally what my family would have had me go for. I didn't even tell them. Like that I didn't, you know, my parents are like, I'm not telling them I have this choice. You know?
Smart, ma'am.
Yeah, you know, and there's that awareness too of, you know, who can hear this, that I'm choosing. I mean, truly what I was doing was choosing based on the energy of what I'd like my life to be.
Yes.
And this one choice was that, even with all the uncertainty, and the other choice was very much not that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I said, well, I'm going to choose what really is that energy that I'd like my life to be. And it created amazing it was like the best job to start out of social work with. I had a supervisor who was amazing and like taught me things about business, and like, because I was a supervisor, I had to supervise people and stuff, and like stuff that served me well in everything I've ever done since then.
Well, and another thing, when you're talking about not two things. One is as you go forth, if you're making anybody's opinion or universe or anything greater than you can't pivot.
Yeah.
So it's really about honoring what you know to be true for you.
Mhm.
And the other thing is a kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Like you were talking about, Pam, not saying anything to your family. And I've done things like that. You look at the energy of it, and you do whatever's required to make your life easier.
Yeah.
It's that simple. To not create confrontation and ups and downs if you don't have to. But for some reason, what you were talking about, your first job as a social worker, made me think of my first job as a social worker. And I don't know if this is a pivot or not, but I thought of it and laughed. I was able to interview for a job working in a psych hospital, which in those days, people stayed 6-8 weeks. It was great. It wasn't like they came in for 3 days. But the interviewer looked at me and said, "Now, I just have to ask you, are you taking this job?" I was on the adult unit, "with the hopes that you'll be able to move to the children's unit soon?" And I'm like, that would be my worst nightmare. I got hired immediately.
That's awesome.
So just being clear about it, apparently a lot of therapists want to do that. They want to go work with children. I'm like,
Nope, nope, nope.
nope, not happening for
Give
me.
me the seriously crazy any day. That's Marilyn.
Exactly.
Well, all of this makes me think of another example. So my husband and I, in our marriage, we were people who we talked everything out and we, agreed on everything. And kind of the whole thing was us moving our marriage forward together. And there came a point where there was something that I was aware of, I was choosing that I'd like to do that we didn't agree on. And it was the first time ever. Right. And we were having this conversation, and it's like we were both trying to get each other to see it the way we were seeing it so that we could continue seeing everything the same way. And there was a moment where I can't remember what I asked him, but I asked him a question, and suddenly we were both like, we can agree to disagree.
Wow.
Like, we
Yes.
can be happily married and not look at everything the same way.
That's
And
awesome.
make different choices, kind of, from honoring each other, but also recognizing we're different. And, we might not agree with what each other is doing all the time. And, and that, and I was thinking about this because so often you can hear us say like, oh, what works for you? And take that
Mhm.
as, oh, I need to be very selfish. I need to not think of anybody else.
Mhm.
But actually, when you're looking at what works for you, it includes everybody. We
Yes.
talked about it as the kingdom of we.
Mhm.
Like, when you're making choices that really work, everyone, it creates more for everybody.
Yes.
And so that moment for us in our relationship, that gave us just huge, like, difference in depth to our friendship, being able to disagree about something and still choose to go forward together. But
I
to
love
go
that. Yeah.
forward, it was a huge pivot from we have to be on the same page all the time to we can actually have different pages and that works.
Yeah. I love that. That's great, Pam. So I would say go out there and pivot
Go out there and pivot.
and have fun with it.
Yes. Okay. So shall I cue the music?
I think we shall cue the music. Thank you. Thank you all for listening.